Go. All right. Hello, my name is Benjamin Wilson. This is my video lab report for the Physics 2212 Lab 1 charge tapes. As an introduction to this experiment, the purpose of it was to observe how neutrally charged objects can gain excess charges by evaluating the interactions of a charged piece of tape with another charged piece of tape. Generally, my results were that my pieces of U tape were attracted to one another for reasons I don't understand. I valued them to be positively charged as they were attracted to the negatively charged pin, and the charge of the tape was 9.3 e to the negative 9 coulombs, and the number of deficient electrons was 5.81 e to the 10. The fundamental physics principles that were featured in the experiment are as follows and can be seen: Coulomb's law, force of gravity on an object, force equals mass times acceleration. Opposite charges attract and like charges repel. Force on a charged object, force equals electric field times charge. Generally speaking, the structure of this experiment was I would place a piece of tape on a base tape, rip it off, induce either a net charge of some form through either an excess amount of electrons or a deficiency in electrons. Observe the sign of that net charge by the interaction of that piece of tape with a negatively charged plastic pin, and finally observe what the actual charge on one of the pieces of U tape designated tape B is based off of this displacement it features when approached by tape A, being the other piece of U tape, as tape B is suspended in the air. My general observations for the beginning of the experiment were that despite my expectations, the U tapes did not repel each other and instead were attracted to one another. This is some very confuddling error that I ran into in my experiment and pretty much disabled me from continuing with it effectively, I'm pretty sure the tapes were intended to repel one another. I don't know why this happened. They definitely possess a charge because they were attracted to neutral objects, but this is the result that I observed. And then I did observe that the U tapes were positively charged as they were attracted to the negatively charged pin. So they were either positively charged or the pin just was failed to have a negative charge after I attempted to induce a negative charge on it, and that means that they could be either charged because they would still be attracted to neutral objects. The only way I'd be able to know what charge they were for sure is if they were repelled by the pin, which would mean that they were negative because the pin was negatively charged. As I continue my observations, like I said before, my pieces of tape were attracted to one another, so I was not able to make tape B float above tape A, which normally would cause me to be unable to continue the experiment, but instead I just decided to assign an arbitrary value to the charge, or to the distance at which tape A was from tape B when tape B was supposed to be repelled. That value that I chose was 0.02 meters. Before continuing the experiment, there were some simplifying assumptions I had to make in order to calculate the charge in tape B, which was the ultimate intention of this experiment, and those can be as seen on this slide. As you can see here, these are the different calculations, the data I gathered throughout the entirety of the experiment. I was ultimately able to calculate the charge of tape on the tape, which was 9.3 e to the negative 9 coulombs, by setting the equation for the magnitude of the force of the electric force equal to the gravitational force on tape B, and then solve for Q after doing so. Then I constructed a computation model based off of the observations I made in the experiment in order to represent the gravitational force on tape B, as well as the electrical force induced by the electric field of tape A on tape B. As you can see here, as the red sphere represents tape A and the blue sphere represents tape B. And then I also used the computation model to calculate the charge on the piece of tape B, which was very similar to the results I got during the experiment. As far as additional questions are concerned, if electrons had positive charge and protons had negative charge, what would change about the observations you made with your tapes and other charged objects? They would largely be the same. All the interactions would be the same. The only thing that would really change would be the sign on the objects that had a net charge, as specified by the question, but their interactions with one another would be the same. If the pieces of tape were positive, positive, negative, negative, they would still repel, so they'd be the same. And why is it important to handle the charged tapes as little as possible? And what happens to them when they come in contact with other objects? Well, the electrons that they either possess in excess or that they're deficient in could be transferred over or be transferred to the tapes, which can cause them to return to a neutral state and effectively make them not possess the charge properties that I would need them to in order to continue the experiment. And so it's imperative to handle them with as much care in order to retain those properties and make have the charges remain consistent throughout the experiment.